Hi there. When we left off with our lesson, we had Jesus was on the cross, and we explained about when he died, what it meant for us, that he was the Messiah, that he was the Son of God, and all of our sins were placed on him. And that is important and very good news. But now we're going to talk about how can I know he was who he said he was? How can I know that the people who have spread the gospel and God used them to write the Bible, how can I know that that's true? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So after Jesus died on the cross, a couple of wonderful things happened, and that's where we're at today. Today we're going to talk, the lesson is Jesus in the tomb, and the memory verse is John 11:25 that says, "He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." And so we'll get started. The Jewish leaders had some strict rules they obeyed. Sometimes it was more important for them to keep these rules than it was to be kind and thoughtful to others. One rule they had was never to leave a dead person unburied overnight. They also had another law that they were very strict in following. They couldn't work after the sun went down on Friday evening when the Sabbath began. That was every week. They could not do anything on the Sabbath, which they did as Saturday, and we kind of do that as Sunday, where we go to church on Sundays. We must hurry and get Jesus' body down from the cross and get it buried by sundown, the leader said. We must obey the laws. Forget the fact that we were yelling, "Crucify him." We can't mess up that rule. You ever known anyone who was such a stickler for the rules that they didn't care about people? And to be honest with you, especially in my first days as a Christian, my first several years, I was that way. I cared more about the rules than I did about people's hearts. And it took me a long time to understand that, so that one gets me. So in order to get Jesus' body, it wasn't the Jewish leaders that crucified Jesus. They could not. They pressured Pilate, the Roman governor, to have Jesus crucified. So they could not just take down Jesus' body. They had to have permission. Jesus had two friends who belonged to the Supreme Court, or Sanhedrin as it was called. They were Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. When Jesus was alive, they knew in their hearts that he was the Son of God, but they didn't want to say anything. They were afraid of the other leaders. They felt sad that they had never told Jesus how much they loved him. It was too late. They probably many times wanted to take that stand in front of the other Jewish leaders, but they never did. But we should never count someone out because we don't know how they might stand up in just a little while. And we'll see what Joseph and Nicodemus did. When Jesus died, Nicodemus and Joseph were more than sure that Jesus was truly the Messiah. The Messiah meaning the one that they were waiting for, that they knew all through the Old Testament, that the Messiah was coming and he was going to redeem them. He was going to redeem us. And I could go into so many. I'm going to show restraint and stay on track, Missy. Stay on track. They were glad they were no longer going to be secret believers. I want people to know I love Jesus, Joseph thought. So he went boldly to Pilate and asked, "May I have the body of Jesus to give him an honorable burial?" Do you remember what Pilate said about Jesus? He asked them, "Why do you want to crucify him?" He said, "I find no fault in this man." He knew that Jesus was innocent, and he knew that they wanted him crucified just because they were jealous of him and just because of their religious thoughts. But so Pilate gave him permission to take the body down off the cross after he was sure Jesus was dead. So Joseph took Jesus' body away. Nicodemus also had been a secret believer. Remember, he was the one that came to Jesus one night so that no one could see him. Nicodemus he asked Jesus a lot of questions. I'm going to do another video more for, grown-up level in just a little bit about John chapter 3. And it is an amazing chapter, and I love the encounter with Nicodemus. And I love this side note. I have to get one side. I am allowed a side note. I love the series The Chosen, and especially fell in love with the episode about Nicodemus coming to Jesus by night. Now I read it with a whole different kind of person in mind. Nicodemus really wanted to know, are you that Messiah? And he had so many questions, and Jesus answered them. Anyway, so that Nicodemus, he came and talked to Jesus one night when no one could see him. After Nicodemus saw Jesus die, he too said, "Now I want people to know I love Jesus. Jesus is truly the Son of God." So these two bravely come in and ask Pilate for the body of Jesus. Nicodemus was a very rich man. He brought with him 100 pounds of embalming ointment made from perfume and expensive oils. Together, he and Joseph wrapped Jesus' body in a long linen cloth saturated with spices. And then they went to the tomb. Intercession moment. As all my people fall to the floor. And they took, can you see the tomb? I might have to move it out a little, it might look a little odd there. Or maybe I can just move a little. So they took Jesus' body, and they wrapped it in this long linen cloth, saturated with all these beautiful spices, very expensive spices. Because you know what? Even though they didn't do something great like that during Jesus' ministry when he was alive, they did want to, this is my last opportunity to give Jesus some honor. And really that's why we should do everything that we do, especially those things that are sacrificial of our time, of our money, of our resources, to do it in a way that this might be my last opportunity to do something to honor him. And that's exactly what these two did. They showed up at the end and made a declaration that they believed in Jesus and that Jesus deserved a proper burial. They went to the tomb which Joseph had intended to be his own when he died. The new tomb, which had been cut out of solid rock. This big old rock, this was extremely expensive. So Joseph of Arimathea was a very rich man. Many people, they had to cut into the stone and cut and cut and cut till they hollowed out a room and had a burial place. The new tomb, which had been cut out of solid rock, was in a garden close to the place where Jesus had been crucified. And those who have been in my class for a very long time remember that those beautiful Old Testament stories when we talked about the king's dream, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and we talked about how at the very bottom how the image was gold and then silver and brass and iron iron mixed with clay, and then a rock hewn or carved out of the rock carved out was thrown to it. Right here is where this happens, is what happens in just a little bit. Jesus was placed in there. His body was dead. He truly died because he was flesh. But something wonderful happened. So think about that lesson that we had about Nebuchadnezzar and about that stone breaking the iron and the clay feet. It was large enough to walk into, so Joseph and Nicodemus carried Jesus inside and gently laid him down. After they left, they closed the entrance by rolling a great stone across it. Some of the women watched as Jesus was buried. So they knew right where Jesus' body was. "We will never see him again, will we?" Mary said sadly. "No," said Mary Magdalene. He was the most loving and forgiving person I've ever known. We must leave now, but we will return. Remember, they had to hurry because the Sabbath was starting. It was now the Sabbath, and the chief priests and Pharisees were worried someone might steal Jesus' body. Why do you think that they would worry about that? Why would the Pharisees, who encouraged Pilate to crucify Jesus, why would he worry that someone might come and steal his body? What might a rumor spread that they didn't want spread? "Sir," they said to Pilate, "you remember what that blasphemer Jesus said when he was alive? He said, 'In 3 days I will be raised from the dead.' We need a guard, meaning a group of soldiers, to watch the tomb. So Pilate stationed Roman soldiers around the tomb and sealed it with the Roman seal." So they poured wax, took a seal, stamped it. "Now no one will take away the body of Jesus," they said. Little did they know what would happen next. Can you guess what would happen next? Do you think the disciples came and stole Jesus' body? I forgot to set my timer, so I have no idea how much time I have. But when you see when they saw a Roman seal, you just saw they crucified people. They did it in a public way to ward off anybody else. When you see something that has a Roman seal on it, you don't go messing with it. So no one in their right mind would mess with the Roman seal. So we're going to leave this here, and I'm going to do the next lesson on a different video. But we're going to leave it with Jesus in the tomb and see what it is what is that evidence that we know that Jesus is who he said he is. Think about it.